Hi, gorgeous, and welcome to the Confident, Energized, and Sexy Mama Show. I am Dorit, your host, feminine energy expert, health coach for women, registered holistic nutritionist, and the creator of the groundbreaking health and mindset program for moms, Energized, designed for perimenopausal women who are done having kids and are ready to get their confidence, energy, and sexy back. Ladies, think about it. What would the world look like if, as women, we stopped being so harsh on ourselves and instead felt more energized, powerful, confident, and more connected to our bodies? What if, as women, we honored the fact that we are built and wired differently than men, and being different does not mean being inferior? That the go, go, go mentality, alongside doing more to have more without ever pausing and resting, only leads to chronic stress, anxiety, burnout, overwhelm, lack of joy, and corrodes our health, relationships, and vitality. What if, as women, wives, and mothers, we had the courage and confidence to desire more? More freedom, power, energy, joy, abundance, pleasure, fun, play, and sex, all on our own terms. Mama, you deserve to feel good. You deserve to form healthy relationships, and your body needs, craves, and deserves pleasure. This is your birthright. You're here because you believe in your feminine energy. You're here because you care about health and the environment, and you're not afraid to take action and change. You're here because you don't want to pass on a pattern of self destruction, hiding, and not speaking your truth to your daughters. You're here because you're done feeling stuck, living a mediocre life as a half woman. You're here because you are done struggling and, frankly, can no longer afford to feel like crap. Each week, I will be here for you, dropping a healthy dose of inspiration and motivation, as well as introducing you to my brilliant guests, where we will dive deep into all things womanhood, feminine power, energy, psychology, holistic and alternative health, food, nutrition, hormones, fitness, mindset, motherhood, relationships, sex, business, and much more. So, Mama, are you ready to take back control of your health? Let's do this. Hello, gorgeous. Welcome to another episode of the Confident, Energized, and Sexy Mama podcast. This is Dorit your host and girlfriend. Today, I have such an important, fun, and special episode to share with you. Today is it's my interview with authors of one of my favorite books on women's health. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that just in a few minutes. But before, I just have to express my gratitude and maybe share with you a little bit about this journey of the podcast. I started podcasting 2.5 years ago, a little over that. And in the beginning, when I started, I think one of my biggest intentions was, number one, to share my message and to have a platform that I can create, I can, share my message and have a place where I, can talk about the things that I believe in and to guide women through without it being super, super heavy and difficult to maintain. So I'm just referring, if you're wondering, I remember 2.5 years ago, I was in this kind of like fork road where I had to choose between podcasting and YouTube. And everybody told me to go with YouTube because everybody is on YouTube, but I have decided to go the podcasting route. And I'm so glad that I did, because I know that if I had chosen YouTube, I would probably not be able to be consistent. And so 2.5 years and more into it, I'm so proud to say that I'm still here. And thank you for listening. Thank you for following the show. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for your reviews. I see them coming. That's so incredible. By the way, if you're in the US and you're writing a review, I can't see it because I'm in Canada. So if you want me to see your review and give you a shout out, please snap a picture of your review and send it to me. The best way to share it with me would be through Instagram. So my handle is at Dorit Palvanov Coaching. And let me know you've left a review so that I can give you a virtual hug and say thank you. Anyhow, so my podcast has now reached about 30,000 downloads, and that's amazing in the world of podcasting, and it's growing every day, and I'm super grateful, and it's incredible. But one of the biggest things that my show has allowed me to do is to connect with people I look up to, people whose books I'm reading, people whose messages I'm consuming, people whose work I share with my clients. And so today's interview and today's guests are one of these people. These are a duo, co-authors of well, like I said, one of my favorite books on women's health. So they are Alexandra Pope and Sjanie Hugo Wurlitzer. They are the co-founders of Red School and co-authors of the iconic and hugely celebrated book from Hay House called Wild Power: Discover the Magic of the Menstrual Cycle and Awaken the Feminine Path to Power. They are pioneering the new emerging field of menstruality, creating a new lexicon and approach to women's health and well-being, which is creativity and leadership, and also spiritual life based on the power of our menstruality consciousness. Between both of them, they bring over 45 years of experience, and today they teach worldwide on the psycho-spiritual process of menstruation that unfolds from menarche to menopause and beyond. For those of you who don't know what menarche is, it's your first period. They are committed to training the menstruality leaders of the future. And so before we dive into the episode today, I really didn't want to spend any time to get them to talk about the concepts in the book. I actually personally wanted to ask them other questions. And so I thought before you listen to the interview, I will give you a little bit of a brief, a little bit of an introduction so that our conversation makes sense. If this topic is like something completely new to you, just know that it's okay. It's okay. I've been learning these concepts for years and years and years, and I'm teaching them to my clients. But the basic idea for you to know is this. And by the way, I'm going to mention this, but if this is interesting, I highly, highly recommend for you to get the book, Wild Power. I'm going to include a link to purchase it on Amazon in the show notes. So please go ahead and do so. So what is wild power? Wild power is really our power as women. It's our ability to feel powerful in life, in anything, in everything and anything that we do. Really, your power as a woman, your power as a mother, your power as a friend, as a wife, as an employee, as a coworker, as whoever it is, no matter what role you're playing in the world, and it can be roles. So regardless from that, it is your sense of feeling powerful and safe and secure, and like you have the ability to create and to feel capable in life. And so that power of you, your power as a woman lies in inside of your body. And so I talk about this all the time, and you've been hearing me saying this like a broken record, and I will continue repeating that, because for me, that is the most substantial and the most important piece that was missing in my self-care. And so that power is your body. And even further than that, it's your body, it's your female body. And as females, we are gifted the gift of menstruation. Now, I know a lot of you wouldn't call it a gift, and that's okay. And I certainly didn't call it a gift, in the beginning. But now, the more I understand, the more I lean into it, it just clicks so well that there's so much power inside of it when you really truly understand this framework, and you really do start practicing and living in alignment with that. So the premise of the book, and of course there are many, many, many beautiful concepts in the book, but I'm just going to simplify it for you right now. So the book talks about the 4 seasons. And so the 4 seasons of the menstrual cycle, they correspond to the biological phases, which are the follicular, the ovulatory, the luteal phase, and then the menstruation, right? So the 4 phases of your menstrual cycle. In their work, they talk about them in seasons. So spring would be your follicular phase. So that would be about a week after menstruation. Summer corresponds with the ovulatory phase. So that's when you're primed for conception. Autumn would correspond to the phase of the luteal phase. And winter stands for menstruation. So that's the time when you actually bleed. And each one of these seasons holds energies. And I just, I love that they're using seasons, because it's really, I think anybody can relate to the seasons, and anybody can understand how they feel. But just in brief, just briefly to make, to help you understand, in springtime, your energy would be the energy of renewal, right? So this newness emerging from something, right? So just because you just literally finished, a couple of days of bleeding, there's and menstruation it's a very important and energetically consuming bodily event. And so a lot of us tend to be super, super tired, and our energies dip during our menses, right? When we are on our periods. And I want you to understand that this is normal. That's how it should be. So for those of you who are pushing yourselves too, harder than you need to go to the gym, or to attend certain meetings, or to, get some work done, I want you to know that the more of this you do when your body feels like it needs to just disconnect, the more burnt out you will feel, right? And so this is where it's really important to tap into your body and allow it to guide you and to coach you. Now, I'm not saying that this has to happen all the time, but the more you give yourself the ability to restore and to slow down, the healthier you would be, and the less, health conditions and problems you will experience in your lifetime as a woman. Yeah, right? And it can be mental health, it could be emotional health, it could be physical health, it could even be spiritual health, right? Because the framework we're talking about today, it's actually, this is our spiritual, this is our religion, I think, as women. And I talk about this in the book as well. This is female religion. This is I think this is a foundation for anyone who is born a female. So that's the energy of spring. And then the energy of summer, it's, it makes sense, right? When everything is in full bloom and it's like happy and you're out there and you are energized, you have the most energy. That is the time of ovulation. The time of autumn corresponds to the luteal phase, which is the phase where most women experience the worst symptoms of PMS. So you might be short-tempered, a lot of menstrual, a lot of women who suffer from period pain and cysts and a lot of debilitating pain related to hormones. That's usually the time when you would have those. And so it corresponds to the autumn, right? Because in autumn, if you think about it, that's the time when it's rainy and it's windy and it's kind of like stormy and it's all over the place. And that is also okay. It's okay to understand that it's part of creation. Now, it's not to say that pain is normal. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. It's just to tell you that energetically, if you feel like you're snappier, like you're short-tempered, like you just don't want to engage, you want to, just be on your own. I can give you my own example. I am an extrovert, but once I hit autumn or once I hit the luteal phase, there is a very clear difference between how I am in my ovulatory phase and when I am in the other 2 weeks, in the later 2 weeks of the cycle. I am, much more kind of matter of fact, very analytical, very kind of like hopeful, and I have a tendency to finish projects much better. I have a better sense of focus, but also at the same time, I'm, maybe not the nicest person to to be around during that time, and that's okay. And then winter, it's the time of menstruation, it's the time of our bleed, it's the time when in the book they say that's the time when literally you should be just doing nothing, like nothing. You want to sleep, you sleep. You want to rest, you rest. You want to, go for a walk, you can go for a walk. Whatever, do nothing, whatever nothing means to you, do that. Now, I understand, and you probably understand that too. That's not always sustainable all the time. But in the book also they talk about the concept of just doing 1% better. Even if you change 1%, from today to tomorrow, that is already a progress, right? So focus on progress, not perfection. Even if you just do 1% better, even if you just allow yourself to slow down and relax and rest and restore and rejuvenate just 1% better than you did last cycle, already you would feel the benefits of that, and you are helping yourself to restore and to avoid burning out. So that's the 4 seasons. And then they also talk about MCA, which stands for Menstrual Cycle Awareness. And what that is basically just being aware of your menstrual cycle. It's tracking it. It's the actual act of tracking it. So for example, I know that online there are many calendars that you can find, menstrual calendars. There are tons of apps. I'm going to recommend you 2 of the ones that I'm using. So there is one that is called Natural Cycles, which is, by the way, helpful for you either if you're trying to conceive or you're trying to prevent pregnancy. Or Kindara, Kindara, and I'm going to include links in the show notes so you don't have to remember those. And then another one is called MyFlow. So there are many different apps out there where you can track your cycle. However, I highly encourage you to do this pen to paper. I've noticed that when I do that on paper, when I write about where am I which day of the cycle am I on in my journal, there is a much better, I feel just much more connected to my body, as opposed to, tracking on my phone. But regardless, you choose whatever method works for you. For me, I like to do both. It's paying attention to it. It's journaling about it. It's really connecting the dots between how, the 4 seasons and how, quote unquote, you're supposed to feel, and how your energy level's supposed to be. And of course, these are just guidelines. There's no, right cycle. There is no such thing. And they talk about that in the book as well, how your cycle is yours, and how important it is to own it and to really make the best of it. But at the same time, also to use your cycle as your report card, right? We talked about that in the episode with Jen Pike. I think it was 2 episodes ago. This one is 140. Episode 140 was with Jen Pike, and we talked about that idea of how to use the body and the menstrual cycle as your monthly report card. Right? It's your feedback system. It's your alerting system. It's how to use that to manage your nervous system, how to use that system to establish boundaries. Picking up on energies that you can experience during menstruation, right? Picking up on oxytocin rush, right? When do you feel love and bliss, and when do you feel like you want to connect with others? And when you don't know about cycle awareness, and you'll hear Alexandra and Sjanie mention that in the interview, it's so easy to feel like something is wrong with you, like you're confused, like you're lost, like you are losing your inner sense of safety, your inner trust, this intense sense of vulnerability to access the spiritual dimension of menstruation. And I think it's powerful. I know it sounds heavy, and it might even sound woo-woo, but it's nothing like that. Nothing like that. I can share that, and I've been talking about this on the podcast over and over again lately. There is so much power to living your life in alignment with your 4 seasons, with alignment with your feminine current, with alignment with your cycle, because that is the most reliable framework that you have to take care of yourself. Right? It's so much beyond any food dogma, any diet. It's so much more than anything that is available out there for you to be well. And the faster you learn to understand your female body, the faster you know how to own the power of it, the better you'll feel. And in my opinion, this is really your portal for mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health. All right, so I'm going to stop talking. I hope this makes sense. This is a little intro that was a little too long, but I hope you will enjoy. So I'm just going to share quickly the highlights from today's episode. We talked about the story behind wild power work and the menstrual cycle awareness. Alexandra and Sjanie shared their definition of wild power. We talked about feminine feminism. And I asked them this question: is it possible to do it all? And so I want you to listen to their answer. How can women thrive in their relationships, in their motherhood, in their health, in their career, in all the things, right? So a lot of people refer to it as work-life balance. How can we as women find work-life balance? So I'm interested for you to listen to their answer to that. Also, we talked about how we can create a win-win environment that works both for us women and the workplace. And what do we women lose when we don't practice menstrual cycle awareness? And also, how does MCA, menstrual cycle awareness, support our ability to cultivate energy? Super important for you to know this too. Sjanie talked about motherhood and the benefits for our children to be away from us for a little while we menstruate. I loved our conversation around motherhood and the myths of motherhood. Important for you to listen. They also mentioned, why do we women feel the need to be held and feel safe, and why do we need a man by our side? I think that to me was one question that I've been kind of brewing with for many, many years, because, now that the world is empowering women and we have really anything we want and anything is possible as a woman, why do we need a man? And so I loved their answer. And for me, it's comforting because I know that I want to be, with my husband. I want to have a partnership. I want to be sharing my life with him. And I'm just glad that I was kind of on the same page with their philosophy. And of course, the fun part of the interview was hearing them share what makes them feel confident, energized, and sexy as women. And you will see how their energy instantly shifts, and you can almost imagine them smiling and laughing and just being, their true selves when they answer this question. This is an incredible important episode to listen to if you are a woman looking for your self-authority and your sense of power. Enjoy listening and do let me know what you think. So without further ado, here's my interview with Alexandra Pope and Sjanie Hugo Wurlitzer. Enjoy. Hi ladies, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you, Dorit.
So we have Alexandra and Sjanie here. I am so grateful. Thank you so much for saying yes. Thank you so much for your work. I cannot wait to dive deeper into this conversation. But before we do, I would like to know about how it all started. I mean, it's fascinating. And now that, I'm educated a little bit more, and I kind of like started understanding more about the energetics of our period, and also about how to eat in alignment with the cycle and how to move our bodies in alignment with the cycle. So to me, it's absolutely clear that now that I'm aware of it, but I'm just so curious to know, how did you start with this? Which signals and signs did you pick up in the world that helped you to put all the pieces of the puzzles together?
That's a really good way of putting it, Dorit. What were the signals and signs that we picked up on? And well, of course, it sort of began with me. I'm a little bit older than Sjanie, just a tad. And actually, signs and signals were sort of invisible. They were inside me. It was me keeping faith with myself and trusting something in myself. And I often like to say to people, I think I came into the world coded for this work. And I can say this now, looking back with hindsight. I can see all the steps along the way. And the first sort of key one for me was my experience of menarche. My first bleed was a really beautiful one. And I often say to people, I just remember the light. It was a summer's day. I was at boarding school, actually. And I just felt filled with pride. I felt so full of pride and uprightness. I felt so grown up, and I just remember the sunlight pouring in. So I always felt like I was inoculated in that moment by some kind of grace against all the negativity around menstruation in the world, because I hadn't really been taught much about it. I mean, just the basics of it, but I hadn't been given negative messages. I hadn't been given positive ones, but I hadn't been given negative ones either. So I was sort of a blank slate, and it was the experience of the bleed, the first bleed, that sort of anointed me and gave me a sweetness with the process. I mean, I can say this with hindsight, of course. And then in my 20s, and we're talking about the 1970s, which is the dark ages, Dorit.
Yes.
Dark ages. Back in the dark ages, in the 1970s. It was, second wave feminism was really strong, and I was out there. We were sort of campaigning for abortion rights and so on. And there was this whole movement around women just knowing about how their bodies worked. The Boston Women's Collective had this fabulous book, and I loved it. And I just thought that was just essential element of feminism, that a woman took control of her body, which meant taking control of her fertility. And so I practiced fertility awareness as my contraception. I mean, I was briefly on the pill and then quickly woke up from that little trance. And so I was practicing fertility awareness, which is just being aware of my fertile body, signs for contraceptive purposes. But of course, it was rooting me in my body. I was aware of something and pacing something in myself. because I didn't want to get pregnant at this point. And so that was my 20s. And then it was just in my early 30s, just before my 31st birthday, out of nowhere, I got completely slammed almost, by the most shattering menstrual pain, which I'd never had before. I mean, did have health problems in my 20s, but this period pain, I'd never had problems with my cycle. And this pain was just off the Richter scale. It was hell. And this pain came back every month. And it didn't last for one day. It lasted for 3 days or even 4. I mean, it was insane, the pain. And I, at this point, was already into natural therapies, and I was not going to take drugs. I just knew, or surgery. And I made this radical decision. And this is the key thing. I made this radical decision to believe in my body and believe in my menstrual cycle. I was going to follow my menstrual cycle. I felt my body was talking to me. Now, I don't really know where that came from, but it just came up in me. And so, of course, I sought out natural therapies. That was, and I did go to a mainstream doctor initially who was actually into natural therapies. And essentially, she said I had endometriosis, but I wouldn't get the surgery to get the full, the imprimatur from the doctor that it was that, but I had all the signs of endometriosis. And I just didn't want to be cut open to be told that. And I just began following, researching natural therapies. And today there are just so many resources. We just know so much about menstrual health. But back then we didn't. It was pretty primitive, frankly. And so I won't go into the details of what I did. Actually, I wrote about it in my first book. But the important point here that I want to say is that I began to give space to menstruation. So I was paying attention to my cycle, which meant paying attention to where I was in the cycle. So basically, this was a prototype of menstrual cycle awareness that we teach now. Knowing what day of my cycle I was on, and basically knowing when menstruation was due, because I didn't want to take painkillers every month. And I had some control over my working life because I was partly self-employed, partly not, but partly self-employed I was a psychotherapist starting up my own practice. And I have to say the rest is history. It took me quite to heal my body completely of pain. I think it was about 10 or 11 years before I would say I was actually pain-free. But in those early years, it was just going cold turkey with the pain, because if I could, I would just take the time off and I would just stare into that pain as it hit me and ride it through. And it was revelatory. I felt like I had revelations, really. And then, so with the natural therapies, of course, everything started to ease. And the crucial thing was that I was resting at menstruation. I mean, this is the radical thing, was actually stopping at menstruation. And this just opened everything up. And so my body was healing. So I began to teach this work, just on menstrual health, really, but paying attention to your cycle. And because I thought no one else will come to a workshop on menstruation, so only women who suffer. And so I began teaching women who suffered. And as I was a psychotherapist, people used to come to me in my psychotherapy practice about it. And it was just listening to women's stories. And something started to piece together. It was literally, Dorit, like getting pieces of a puzzle, just as you said. Yeah. And I started putting the pieces together, and this image, this picture, this amazing story started to reveal itself to me. Yeah. And, we're talking, that's 37 years ago now.
Wow.
That pain erupted. So, because I'm in my 60s now. And I have just consistently held true to, I just had a trust in something. And of course, every time I bled, as the suffering eased, I started to feel all the power of menstruation, the ecstasy, the love, all the things we write about in our book, Wild Power, the visioning. And it was so incredible. But of course, when I go back into normal life again, no one got it. No, there was no one to speak to about it at first. There is now. So that's how it began. And then I began teaching more and more widely. I was living in Australia, and I began there in Australia. And then I started running workshops in the UK, and I had written my first book by then. And Sjanie had read my first book and discovered I was doing a workshop in London and came to that workshop. And I was in Australia still at that time, but I moved back to the UK to live about 11 years ago now. And a serendipity, magic, synchronicity brought us back together again. And Sjanie and I together have been working very deeply. Everything that we teach today really has just really, everything has just profoundly expanded, hasn't it, Sjanie, from the sort of what I originally brought, the basic sort of template has just expanded and deepened and filled out through our collaboration, Dorit, over these last 11 years. Sjanie, would you like to?
Yeah, I'm curious. I'll tell you why, Alexandra. I remember reading from your book that you mentioned that you don't have any children, right?
No, I don't.
So I'll tell you, listening to this, it just, and I know that the listeners of my show, they think the same way. This is all so beautiful. It really is. But as someone who raises small kids, it makes it like a fantasy, like almost like, it's easy for you to say because you don't have kids and you don't have, and it's like 24 hours, go, especially now, modern life. So that's why I really want to hear Sjanie's perspective, because I know, Sjanie, you are a mom, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
mother of two daughters.
2 daughters. So interesting.
Yeah.
I have 3 girls. So cool.
Oh my God.
Wow. So what is it you're most wanting to know, Dorit?
So I'll tell you something. I have been recently on a podcast, and this lady, she basically she described my work. She kind of gave me a title. She said, "You know what, Dorit? It sounds like you're a feminine feminist." And I thought about it for a minute, and I loved it because it's so true. And remember how in the beginning, when we just, before we hit record, I said, from what I see out there, from my clients, from my own personal experience, I see that in order for us women to really take care of ourselves, it's almost like we have to make a choice. And, women talk about work-life balance all the time, especially moms. And my show is, my listeners are mostly mothers or mothers to be. And so in order for this to succeed, it's almost like we have to make this unconscious or maybe conscious choice of, I'm either going to put my energy fully into my home, so into my marriage, into my, my parenting, my motherhood experience, or I'm really going to put the majority of my energy into my career and my work. So it's what I see out there, it's almost one over the other. Women who do really good at work, it's very rare to see that they're also thriving, in their relationship, in their marriage, in their motherhood experience. And it's vice versa. It's, moms who are really dedicated to their home struggle with expressing themselves in the world professionally and really being financially rewarded for that. And so I just really want to hear your perspective as a woman who practices this as a mother, as I assume wife, as a businesswoman. And I'm just curious to know how you take this work and how do you use it to thrive? Does it make sense?
Yeah, makes complete sense. As I'm listening to your question, my heart is starting to race, sort of, I can feel a nervousness in my body. And at the same time, I also feel really emotional because I think what you're asking is a very, it's such a big question. And I think it's one that, I can hear you struggle with it. And I hear you saying all the women struggle with it. And I know I struggle with it. And the first thought that comes to me is, it's interesting as women now in this, day and age, we have so much opportunity and so much possibility and so much choice around the kind of life that we want to live. And at the same time, it is absolutely humanly impossible to do it all. I mean, it just is. If we can find ways of really being supported, I think that's what it comes down to. That's what I've found it comes down to for me, is if I can really be supported in my life, in my family life, in my work life, in my personal life, then it suddenly becomes possible for me to flourish in ways beyond my wildest imagination without me having to sort of be stressed or suffer or kind of have the joy of life sucked from within me. And the way that I came to really understand this has been through my cycle awareness practice. So my relationship with my cycle is this. It's a very deep thing that just keeps revealing to me, the places where I'm not able to receive, and and that's something that sort of is a theme that keeps coming up for me, and I keep sort of noticing, and then finding new ways to kind of lean back and to allow in more of what it is I'm needing. And so, just to give you the sort of picture of my life. So I'm a woman with a really strong calling. I mean, my mission is to restore menstruality to the world in my lifetime, to restore it to institutions, organizations, family life, in communities, for it to really become the bedrock of our culture. Cycle awareness, just to become, I guess, a bit like yoga has become in the West. It's everywhere. Everyone's doing it. It's just like a basic self-care practice that everybody knows about and everyone's working with it. Okay, so it's a pretty big mission we are on. And I have 2 daughters, and I'm married, and I'm homeschooling my eldest daughter. So I'm sort of well immersed in family life. And of course, I have hobbies and interests in the social life and all these kinds of things. And the only way that I'm able to do this is because I let people help me. Yeah, that's basically the bottom line.
It's the only way.
It's the only way. Yeah.
Do you also practice cycle syncing? Do you also eat in alignment with your cycle?
Yeah, everything I do is oriented towards what I feel I am needing at any given point in my cycle. So it's less that I kind of apply some sort of technology in terms of my eating to my cycle, but it's more that I'm just really deeply attuned to what my body is needing, both in terms of exercise, rest, food, etc., etc. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, life is.
I love that so much, because I think this is the most empowering way to live. But also with, this diet culture we are all immersed in, it also requires so much trust. And like you said, like the leaning in and less resisting, and just really trusting the wisdom of the human body and also your own body. I know a lot of women, women I work with, the work that I do with women, it's kind of like the intersection between mindset work and health coaching. And so a lot of women, they have so many cravings, cravings for sweet and alcohol and just binge eating and that kind of stuff, that so much, and that was happening over a period of many, many years, that they have lost that connection with themselves, that deep trust in themselves. And I think that work menstruality and practicing menstrual cycle awareness, it really helped me. And I also pass it on to my clients to deepen that connection, to feel more connected to our bodies. So
I'd love to come in here, Dorit,
yeah, please.
As someone who observes Sjanie living her life
yes.
with everything she has to do, and how, especially how we negotiate, because of course I'm post-menopause now, but I still have cyclical needs. No, I don't have a menstrual cycle, of course, but the thing about the cycle is, it is a template for living. It's a template for pacing your energy and pacing your nervous system. It's a way to menstrual cycle awareness connects you deeply to yourself and to your own particular strengths and vulnerabilities. And so with Sjanie, Sjanie's deeply, deeply embedded in her cycle. And of course, she can't follow the cycle in the way she would really, really love. For instance, at menstruation, she'd love to just go off for 3 days and do nothing.
Yeah.
and that's always possible. But in our work together, we try to allow for those kind of shifts in energy with her cycle. But also, I want to say here, Sjanie works to the strengths of her cycle. So at particular times of the cycle, she can do 10 people's jobs all at once.
Yeah.
She can, Sjanie, when you're in your sort of coming up to the ovulatory time and through the ovulatory time of your cycle, and even coming just into the beginning of your premenstrual phase, you're firing and delivering. You're just so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're in that latter half of the cycle, you've got a very insightful energy that comes in, a sort of good critical energy, very insightful. And I really love working with that energy with Sjanie, with all the different energies of her. And then there's a moment where Sjanie kind of just disappears. She drops away, and I can feel like she has departed, and that is, of course, when she's menstruating. And there's something about just knowing that pattern and accommodating it as best you can. And just, it's not ideal. She can't go off for 3 days at a time. But there's a certain way of being with yourself. There's a certain way we organize our work. And there's a certain way you relate to yourself that changes everything.
Exactly.
This is the important thing. Yes, Sjanie.
This is it. And Alexandra, you're really reminding me, what the cycle makes time for everything. Every phase or aspect of the cycle has different qualities and capacities. And so there is a kind of season for everything within our cycle. And if we can really trust that, we will end up getting to everything. It may just not be in the kind of order or timing that our heads might imagine. But if we work with cyclical life, everything comes round. You sort of get in the end. So I'll just use the basic example of domestic chores, because we've all got them. If you've got kids, you've got a truckload of domestic chores going on, right? And you could just be kind of hammering them out all day, every day. You could operate like that, or you could kind of be like, yep, there is a certain time in my cycle where I really get into the kind of deep, organizing, tidying, sorting of my house. And then there are other times where I just, like right now, I'm day 2. And, to my left is a pile of unwashed laundry. The house has just fallen apart around me. It has. And I'm just letting it be. I'm just like, that is how it's going to be for now. Because in a few days' time, I'll suddenly get this bee in my bonnet and I'll be like, right, let's get this place sorted out. And I'll get all the stuff taken up into the loft and the blah, blah, blah. So things do come round. There is a kind of everything will happen if you can just kind of be patient with yourself and patient with
this resonates with me so deeply, and the immediate question, kind of response that I want to respond to this is with the differences between a man and a woman. So this comes up again and again in my practice with women. Oftentimes they would tell me, yes, but my husband, how come he is able to go to work, and then come back and still, be like, to be able to switch from work mode or work zone into family and home zone or home mode. And he just does it like in an instant, and he's still nice to the kids. He still, does things in the kitchen or whatever is needed to do. And he's just very constant. Whereas we women, it's like you said, because of our cyclical nature, we are not constant in that sense. We change because our hormones change, because we have ovaries, and that's just the way it is. But one thing that I absolutely must ask you, and I think this is a question that I am struggling to answer in my debates with people around this stuff, is how can we make this easy for people, for, let's say, our employers, for corporations who, I've had these, I work with women who are executives in their companies who really wanted to empower their female employees, but they struggle because it's much easier to follow the 9-to-5 work regime because it's constant. It's something that you can kind of lean into long term. It doesn't change. It doesn't rock the boat inside of the office too much. Whereas our cyclical nature is so different, energetically speaking, right? Our energies change all the time. So I'm really curious to know, what would your answer be to that? How can the workforce, what does the workforce need to do to help us women to work better in a way that is good for us as women, and it helps us to restore, and it helps us, it helps our emotional health, our mental health, our physical health also, but also in a way that helps the company grow and the company evolve and achieve their goals.
Just a little question, Dorit.
I know, right?
Just a tiny, teeny, weeny little question. There's so much in this, and we have to just unpack it slowly, because although there's a revolution going on now around the menstrual cycle and menstruation, it is also still pretty taboo. Mm-hmm. So in certain circles now, it is being spoken about, and there's a lot more literature, and of course there's organizations like ours that are creating an impact, and others as well. But the truth is, the majority of people, this is just like, ooh, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
And so we have to be a little bit subversive, actually, as well as latch onto where it is showing up in the media, and where there are companies talking about period policies. And so it's important to latch onto those. There are one or two very interesting things going on, actually. But the way I look at it is that it's us women who have to make peace with our menstrual cycles first. It's no one else is going to come along and say, here, we should honor your menstrual cycle. Yeah. The change really has to happen in women. I mean, I hope there are people that come along and say that to you one day. But the change, it has to be us women that step up and stop seeing it as a negative, as a problem, as a pathology, as sort of yuck, but actually making peace with it and recognizing it's a cycle and all cycles are valid. It's like this, the day-night, the circadian rhythm. We all know how shitty we feel when we don't sleep properly. And it's similarly with our menstrual cycle. If we don't care for that, we can end up feeling not great. So how can we make this easy for our corporations? Well, I think it's kind of, I want to use the word guerrilla warfare. Warfare is not the right word, but sort of guerrilla tactics, whereby as a woman, you just start practicing cycle awareness for yourself, because in and of itself, that's very, very powerful, Dorit, regardless of whether the rest of the world is doing it. Just you doing it changes you. And inevitably, because you're doing it, you want to talk about it. And you start talking about it with your best friend or something like that. Or in the workplace, you mention it, and then someone is interested. And then there's two of you that are doing it. And then,
hey, Mama, I am pausing the interview to invite you into a transformation. So do you want to go to the beach, but feel shy to be seen in a bathing suit? Do you desire to feel more confident in the bedroom? Are you a caring mom who wants to keep up with your kids but just cannot get out of bed? How long are you going to put up with less than what you deserve in health and love? How long are you going to put up with lacking confidence, feeling unworthy, feeling like you're incapable of doing hard things, feeling self-doubt and eating yourself from within? When are you going to stop the excuses, the self-induced suffering, the time-wasting drama, wishful thinking, the lies and fantasies that you've been telling yourself since you were a little girl? When are you going to stop past trauma to keep from repeating and keeping you stuck? When are you going to take control of your anxiety and panic attacks? When are you going to stop living a victim mentality? How long are you going to tell yourself that you don't deserve a fun and fulfilling life, that you don't deserve a healthy relationship and a satisfying sex life? How long are you going to tell yourself that you don't deserve a calm and peaceful motherhood journey? How much longer are you going to believe that you're bad at sex? How much more time are you going to waste believing that you're less than that woman you follow on Instagram? How many years have to pass before you're allowed to feel confident, energized, and sexy? When do you get to feel joy? When do you get to feel alive? When is it your time? So I'll tell you, it is now. I'd like to introduce you to the Confident and Energized Mastery Program for Busy Moms. So, is this you? You've had a big life change like a new baby or a career change, but you don't even know who you are anymore because of that. You've had a lot of stress recently. Maybe you're working around the clock, just made a big move, or just got your kids settled in school and you haven't done anything for yourself. Maybe you don't even know if you have the energy to take care of yourself. All you can handle is Netflix and scrolling. And I get that. I've been there too. Maybe you're stuck in the pattern of taking care of everyone else and never find a time for you. And you're starting to feel resentful, but also feel selfish taking time for yourself. If you resonate with any of that, then I have the answer for you. My Confident and Energized Mastery Program is a one-on-one health and mindset transformational coaching experience for women, wives, and mothers. You will learn how to feel proud of yourself, how to cultivate the sense of confidence, how to feel good about your daughters looking up to you, how to become a woman that your husband will be proud of, how to feel confident at the beach without hiding under baggy clothes, how to have enough energy to play with the kids, how to learn to make healthy choices at the store even when you travel, how to enjoy sex again. And this might even save your marriage, like one of my clients said. So I'll show you in this program how to have all the energy and how to feel like yourself again. And you can do this fast. You don't have to waste years and years in agony. You can feel confident, energized, and sexy while being a wife and a mom. Remember this: no energy, no life. So let's get your life in order as I teach you how to harness your natural energy in a sustainable, reliable way, finally. So while working together, here's the transformation that you'll go through. We will redefine your values. You will learn how to communicate clearly and effectively, your needs met without feeling like you're a mean person or like you're a bad person for asking. You will understand your female body and how to take care of it. You will stop wasting energy and money on feeling anxious or burnt out and instead get in the flow, finally. We will do a hormonal Dutch test together and I'll show you the results. And you'll get the results by a licensed naturopathic doctor on my team. You will learn how to plan your meals without spending hours in the kitchen. This is my superpower. You will learn how to cook food that kids love. You will learn the steps to good digestion and healthy bowel movements to optimize energy and vitality. And, if this is something based on our work together that you know that you need to do, things like getting off of gluten, doing a sugar detox, cleaning yourself from alcohol, dairy, or anything else that you know is bad for you, with my support, we will do this together. You do not have to do this alone. As well, you will learn to prioritize yourself without mom guilt. You will learn effective and cutting-edge communication skills and ask for help to get your needs met. You will learn to speak your truth confidently without feeling shame for it, to love yourself in the mirror and stop dreaming of slicing off your arms, thighs, and belly once and for all. You'll learn to embrace your feminine superpower and start living like a goddess, finally. Get the strategies that you need to stop feeling like everything that goes wrong is your fault. Shift from I can't to how can I? And get the skills that you need to raise strong and confident daughters. That woman that you were, she's still in there. It's time to let her out. So if this sounds like the program you've been waiting for, then head on over to my website, doritpalvanov.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, DORITPALVANOV.com/apply. And on that page, you will see an application. Fill it out and hit submit. After you do that, I will get an email notification and I will contact you within 24 hours. And then we'll get on the phone and see if we are a good fit to work together. Whatever it is that you decide to do, I want you to remember that you deserve a better health and you deserve more love. Hope to see you on the other side. Now, back to the interview.
The two of you are winking at each other and going, I'm in my autumn today. That's your premenstrual phase. And you know what that means. And then more and more women start to get interested. And then maybe you do a little workshop in the workplace, it's so fascinating how these things snowball when one woman just decides to do it differently for herself. And all we're talking about is a woman just knowing where she is in her cycle and caring for herself as best she can within the context of that 9-to-5 sort of male energy dominated world. And something starts to shift. Sjanie,
that's what you're saying, Alexandra. Yeah, I'm going to say something sort of slightly controversial here. I really love what you're saying, and I'm just thinking back, Dorit, to the example you gave of how so many women say, how is it my husband can do such and such, and that really sort of highlights just this hangover that so many people are stuck with, which is just that somehow that way of being is better, that way of being and that way of operating in the world is somehow better. So we're kind of grappling with that, and at the same time we're grappling with that, our systems are orientated around that kind of more linear way of being. That our systems are not cycle-centered. They don't have this kind of cyclical, sustainable intelligence at work in them, which is why there is so much mayhem in the world and so much devastation and destruction, to our resources, because we just haven't been operating in a way that really accounts for this magnificent intelligence of cyclical life. So what we're talking about here is really a huge paradigm shift. We're talking about really recovering or reinstating a new consciousness, a new way of operating in the world. And it's us women that are going to be bringing this through. And what happens is when people learn about cycle awareness, often their first response is, yes, but how can I do that? Because my job and my boss and my community and my whatever don't accommodate for my cycle. And whilst that is true, at some level, it's a bit of an abdication of responsibility by us women, because the way that our communities and our companies and our governments and everything are going to start to honor cyclical intelligence is when we women really begin to value this way of being in the world. And we see that our way of being is as valuable and as powerful and as creative. So, what Alexandra's saying is really what it's about. If each of us starts to orientate towards this way of living and we rest and trust in our cyclical intelligence, we start to take pride in that and dignify that way of being, and its value becomes totally obvious to everyone around us. Everyone around us will see that we are happier, healthier, more productive, more creative, more potent because of how we are, the rhythm that we're choosing to follow in our lives. And then, the systems will crumble one by one.
Oh, this is
That's my
so
prediction.
powerful. This is so powerful what you just said. It kind of angers and saddens me at the same time that how is it that this is not mainstream? How is it that I can't go to my doctor and talk to him about my menstrual cycle awareness, about the energies of my cycle, just because, why isn't it so? I mean, it just makes so much sense to me now that I know this. I absolutely agree. I think it's very similar to the way I think, Sjanie, you and I practice it in our homes. So, for example, you know how Alexandra said that because she works so closely with you, she has this ability to notice your energy and how you change along your cycle. And I think it's very similar to how we live with our partners. So my husband now, he's so well versed. So I'm also day 2 of my cycle. Yesterday, we didn't even have to talk about it. He said, just fine, just take the evening off, just go. Like if you need to if you need to do something, it's fine. I'll take care of the kids. And of course, it took some training, and it took me, like you're saying, it took me owning and honoring me and my needs, and then obviously communicating that with him consistently. Now it's just the way we live. And our kids, we're raising 3 girls. My oldest is 10. And I started infusing these, the menstrual cycle aware, MCA, I call it, and, my energy and the way I eat and the way I move my body. And I started talking to her in this way. And it just blows my mind the way she responds to it. I think it's so true what you're saying. It has to start with us first.
I just find that so lovely.
Awesome.
Just hearing you speak like that, Dorit.
Yeah.
And how your husband is, come to the
believe,
party.
I believe, 100% of the men of the women I work with, they're really in relationship with good men, with men who want to support them, with men who
and they want to understand. Actually, in my experience, men want to understand what's going on. They don't get it. They're so confused. And the moment they learn about this cyclical process and the different changes, they're just so relieved. They now have the kind of instruction manual on how to, be with us. And then they become allies in the way your husband is for you.
Exactly. Oh, it's so true. So true. All right. My next question is, so we've kind of talked a lot about how this work can absolutely benefit us women. But I was wondering if you could speak to what is it that we lose if we don't live and practice menstrual cycle awareness?
Wow, I've never been asked that question, have we, Sjanie? And that's actually a really interesting one. What do we lose? Let's riff backwards and forwards, Sjanie, on this one. What do we lose in not connecting to our menstrual cycle? Well, everything. There's so many things. What we're losing out on is, on a very simple level, we're losing out on an amazing feedback system for our overall health and well-being. Your menstrual cycle, the state of your menstrual cycle, is actually a report card on your physical and your emotional well-being. And not only, so you're missing out on that feedback, and because it's like an early warning system, Dorit. So signs of deeper issues will show up through your cycle first. So it's alerting you, there's trouble if you start to have problems. And in attending to your cycle, then you are sort of easing problems so they don't become big ones. So it's a report card. And then the other aspect of not knowing about this work is that you're losing out on this amazing way of managing your nervous system. And actually, it's like cycle awareness is this lovely system of self-soothing. And of course, it teaches you about your boundaries, where you end and someone else begins. And it also helps you to establish boundaries. So you're losing out on just a very easy, natural way of being able to monitor how you're doing. But also, you miss out when you're not doing cycle awareness and you're not then pacing when menstruation is due. You're losing out on all these beautiful energies that you can experience at menstruation, because menstruation is itself, when you're able to stop, not if you're keeping going all the time, you won't experience this, but if you're able to have some time out at menstruation, you're going to notice this amazing soothing of your whole system, what we call the oxytocin wash. Oxytocin is the bliss and love hormone. So there's this amazing soothing of our whole nervous system that goes on when we bleed. And then these wonderful feelings of love and bliss. you miss out on all that. So that's just one very basic level of what you're going to lose out on by not paying attention to your cycle. Sjanie, do you want to pick up the baton here? And there's more I can say, by the way.
Yeah, the one that's coming to the foreground to me is, when you don't know about cycle awareness, it's so easy to feel wrong. It's so easy to wonder what the hell is wrong with you. And to feel, to feel sort of at sea in a way, and lost and confused. And the moment you start practicing cycle awareness, suddenly there is this incredible context that starts to hold you, and you just can orientate yourself within your cycle, and things start to make sense, and you suddenly realize that there is nothing wrong with you at all. It's just the place you're in, and you can really rest in the fact that you are changing, and that you're you're different at different times, and that it's like this layer of wrongness falls away, and a new kind of dignity starts to fill you, and it's I've got a real feeling of the pride, I think, that comes. It's like suddenly, you can feel the pride of being a woman, or the pleasure of being a woman. It starts to replace that yucky,
Sjanie,
wrong
are you a poet?
feeling.
The way you talk and write, oh my gosh. You're so talented. Alexandra, you also.
This is just day 2, you see, because
Oh,
I got
right.
my eyes closed. I'm
Yeah,
getting fed lines from the universe. I'm just sitting here listening to what the universe has to say and passing it on.
it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, in my work, the energy is a big piece, because women who come to me because that for some reason they have been burnt out. Most of them come to me because they've been burnt out at work, precisely because of the go and the achieve at work, and that is already manifesting. It takes its toll on their health and their relationships and their parenting and all of that. So energy is a big thing in my practice. I mean, this podcast is called Confident, Energized, and Sexy Mama Show, because women really do struggle with creating energy and then sustaining it over a long period of time. And so in this, and like I said before we started recording, for me personally as a woman, this work gave me, like you said, context and the foundation and the framework as to how can I to pace myself along the cycle. And that feeling of, oh my gosh, like what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be a nice mom? Why can't I? Like, why, for me, the luteal phase, the autumn, is when I just completely turn to be this raging, monster towards my husband and towards my kids. And for years, I've used to beat myself up for that. And like you said, now that I, practice this, the menstrual cycle awareness, there is no longer that. And to me, this is a huge waste of our energy that to begin with, we don't have.
Huge waste of our energy.
Yeah.
Yes. Can I say something about
Sure.
that, actually, since we're talking about motherhood? Alexandra and I were chatting about this a little bit before the call, which was how it's really interesting when you reflect on the kind of ideal image you hold in your imagination about what, a good mother is. What's an acceptable mother? And for most of us, we'll paint a pretty similar picture of what that is. And it's a generous mother who's always available, who's got it all together. It's just like superwoman. That's what we consider a good mother. And, what the cycle really teaches us is that there are seasons in motherhood as well. And we move through these different ways of being a mother and different ways of relating to our children. And that is so healthy, not just for us, but for the kind of organism of our family. That, there'll be times in the cycle where we're really tapped into. So, for example, in the spring, we're really tapped into the kind of lightness and playfulness, and we can bring this innocence to how we relate to our children. And that's like one way of being. And then, there's another place in the cycle, the summer, where we really can work hard for our children and get things sorted and take them out on fun activities and be generous and really show up when they're needing us emotionally. And then there's the autumn of the cycle where actually we are coming back to ourselves as a way to refuel and replenish. And in that process of us actually slowing down and reconnecting with ourselves, we're loosening the line between us and them. I kind of think of us coming a bit closer and then a bit further away from our children. And during the autumn of our cycle, there's a bit more spaciousness that we allow in our relationships with our children. We can allow for a little bit more chaos, a little bit more of what needs to kind of come through in order for our relationship with them to heal, and in order for them to heal, So there's more spaciousness, and there's more depth, and there's more sensitivity. And that's needed too. And then in the winter, for example, we really need to just step out of motherhood and being responsible and holding it all together. We absolutely need to drop off the radar for a while. Otherwise, our psyches just get so overstretched and so wrung out that we just want to freaking kill them.
Exactly.
And
give them
we
away.
need that, and they need that. They need to go off and be with other people and have the support and connection with other people in the community or in the family. They need to be away from us as well. It's healthy for the whole organism. So I think it's just, the cycle really just teaches us all these different faces of motherhood, and they're all valuable, and they're all valid, and they're all good. The more we can live into all of them, the healthier it is for us and the healthier it is for them.
I can tell you I can share from my own experience, since I started practicing this way. And my husband has always been very immersed in parenting. However, once I've really given myself the permission to step away, it even deepened their connection with their dad. It's absolutely that. And I think that's another thing that I think we as women might lose if we don't practice this way, because there is, and like you said, to speak to that picture or the fantasy of what is being a good mother. To me, I remember in the beginning when I was kind of like, and I think I did a podcast about that, like the picture that I had in my mind about what it means to be a good mom, it was basically Mary Poppins. And then like she's firm, she's poised, she's composed, she's always neat and put together, and she takes them out, but she has her boundaries, and like, but hello, she's not their mom. And she it was just like, I remember that is the reason I think why Mary Poppins became so sensational. It's because there's this fantasy that us moms, us women, we want to be like her. I know that I want to be like her. Anyways, that's my okay.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Right? It's really interesting. I mean, I just to say the one piece, which is, we forget, as valuable as it is for us to be there for our children, it's just as valuable for them for us to not be there.
Yeah.
Some other magic happens, just as you said, like their relationship with their father, or perhaps their relationship with a grandparent, or their friendships, or there's space for something else, and it's the place, it's how they grow. They need that.
And it helps them to really be more balanced, as opposed to
exactly
be the same, be influenced by the same person. Yeah, it's exactly. Powerful. It's powerful. Okay, the last question I'm going to ask you before we move on to the next part is, since you ladies are kind of like experts on womanhood and experts on the female body, there is one thing that comes back in my practice, and that's women's need for safety. In particular, our need to be held by a man. So it's not that and you see, like, the feminist in me, it's like there's even like this fear of saying, of admitting, like, oh my gosh, I need a man. But I really am curious to know what you have to say to that. I see it in my own self. there is like this desire to just be held by my husband's big body. And I also absolutely see it in my girls who prefer daddy's touch over mommy's touch. So do you have anything to say to that?
Alexandra, do you want to say something first about safety? And I'll just,
yes, because this is also another big question, and I think women have been so unsafe, Dorit, for centuries. It hasn't been safe to be ourselves, full stop. We've had to curtail and suppress and hold in because we haven't had any power. And we have been, well, we've been literally burnt at the stake. I mean, you know, that's pure terror to live in that kind of a world. And that's sort of etched into our DNA. I mean, we live very, 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 very privileged lives today in the Western world. And we have huge amounts of way more power and authority than was ever possible for women in times gone by. But I think etched into our DNA is a kind of terror about being our full selves, about truly being ourselves. And the interesting thing about the menstrual cycle is, one, when you practice cycle awareness, it actually builds an inner strength, an inner kind of safety with yourself. You're getting to know and trust yourself. So it does build this inner safety with who you are. And interestingly, there are moments in the cycle where you can feel intense vulnerability, and that is, of course, just before bleeding. And you need that vulnerability to be able to access the spiritual dimensions that open up at menstruation. And if you don't have physical safety or emotional safety in your life at that time, then it's impossible to go into that spiritual dimension of menstruation. So in a way, we women do need protection from our partners. And so in heterosexual relationships, that would be men. We need the men to guard the menstrual time, to stand for us, to give us the safety, to give us safety also meaning order, stability in our day-to-day life, so that you can retreat and know that the world won't collapse when you're not in charge. So we really do need emotional safety and sort of practical kind of safety around menstruation itself, because we are emotionally, physically just way more sensitive and vulnerable. And we need that safety just to manage that time, but also to be able to access the incredible spiritual forces that are available to us if we are able to separate from the world and completely let go and drop. So in that sense, safety is it's a powerful question. I think we women are learning to be safe as ourselves, and that it's safe to be ourselves, and that we won't be metaphorically, literally burnt at the stake for being ourselves, because we have been in centuries past.
Alexandra, as you were talking, I just had this like full body response because I just so resonate with what you said. I think this is exactly the power of remember how I said that there was this lady who called me the feminine feminist. As I was reflecting on that, the things that came back to me is that the feminist movement has done so much, and I'm personally so grateful for it. I mean, like, my girls are for sure are so grateful, not even knowing. But in achieving and fighting and standing up for women, what happened is that we have, I don't know if it's consciously, I think it's unconsciously, subconsciously, we have become the men that we hate. And in that, there is this deep incongruence. I know for sure I have it. In terms of like really feeling safe around the men. Instead, there is this sense of competition even. It's like I'm competing with him. And what you just said is so true, because men have that more linear ability to their restoration. They don't go through these ups and downs. They restore every 24 hours. That is, I think, the longing for safety that we desire and need during our cycle. So yeah, powerful. Sjanie, do you want to add to that?
It's a very thought-provoking question and conversation, and I was just thinking back to what I said earlier on about this kind of stepping out of this notion of isolation and separateness, and how, for us to really flourish as women, we need to be supported. And I think part of, what the cycle is teaching me is that in order for me to really kind of step into the vulnerability of menstruation, there's I'm having to heal my trust in men and my sense of safety with men. I mean, I'm thinking with my husband, and because I'm needing that in order to really let go. I'm understanding very deeply what you're saying, and it's in my experience as well. And I think, as we women occupy what it means to be a woman more and more, men can occupy their role and their place more and more, and then a whole new kind of collaboration can happen that's so wholesome and healthy and good for us all.
We need each other, and we also need ourselves. It's so powerful. Like I said, since I've learned about your work, it just impacted me so deeply. And I've been brewing with these questions for over 2 years now. So I apologize if they're a little heavy, but I'm so thrilled that we are finally having this conversation.
Yeah, all right. I'm glad we finally got to answer them.
So the second part of this interview is a little lighter, hopefully. And these are really questions about you as women. And like I said, if at any point you feel like this is too much or crossing the boundary, just let me know and we'll move to the other question.
It's a nice one. What makes me feel confident is knowing my limits, knowing who I am, what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and respecting that and loving that, and dropping being a perfectionist. I'm over perfection. It's overrated. It's about enjoying being my flawed, messy self and taking responsibility for that too, when it's a bit too messy.
Yeah, good one. I was going to say something similar. I was going to say what makes me feel really confident is the freedom to be absolutely human and make mistakes and, be imperfect. And that gives me a kind of huge sense of freedom and confidence ultimately.
Okay, thank you. And what makes you feel energized?
Oh man, doing what I love. Creativity.
Our answers are going to be very similar.
Yes, Sjanie. I am so love being creative. I love it when we're cooking new ideas, we're developing our next book, we're developing a course, and it's creating stuff. It's amazing.
I love that.
And creating it with Sjanie is really doubly amazing.
That's incredible. I love how your energies, like your voice is totally changed, both of you. It's amazing. And then my last one is, what makes you feel sexy?
Mm.
Yeah, go ahead, Sjanie.
What makes me feel sexy is being really inside my own skin, having a real contact with the kind of sensory experience of my body. When I feel like I'm inhabiting myself and my senses are alive and awake, that makes me feel really sexy. Yeah, that's it for me.
I have to second that. It's just feeling well. It's feeling well and happy in myself. There's just nothing like it. Yeah.
It's incredible. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing in the world, for your courage. For I know that this work is sometimes, and for sure, you come against a lot of resistance. But thank you for your courage. Thank you, courage. Thank you for your perseverance, and thank you for whatever this had done to me, and also to the women that I guide and lead.
You are so welcome, Dorit.
Very welcome. Yeah,
Thank you so much for having us, and for spreading the word, and for loving the ideas so much. It's just so lovely for us. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you for saying yes. I really appreciate it. Wait, before you go, I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did, I want to know about it. So snap a picture of you listening to this episode and share it on Instagram or Facebook. On Instagram, you can tag me at Dorit Palvanov Coaching. So Dorit is spelled as Dorit, and Palvanov spelled as Palvanov Coaching. So it's all one word. Or you can use the hashtag confident, energized, and sexy mama podcast. You see, my personal goal beyond having amazing conversations with guests or hosting solo episodes is to increase the visibility for this platform and these messages to be shared and heard by women who need it the most. And there's no way that I can do this on my own. So I'm asking you, the incredible community of confident, energized, and sexy mamas, to help me with this goal. So whether you're coming to me through iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you're listening to the show from, please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. This would mean the world to me, and it's so helpful for other mothers who are looking for this information. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.